Welcome, blessed people, to Kingdom of Blessings. Today, we will explore a chapter that seems simple, but holds powerful lessons for our faith. Genesis 23. Did you know that here Abraham buys the first piece of land in the Promised Land? Right after losing his wife Sarah? Imagine the pain that Abraham was feeling at that moment. Losing a loved one is one of the most difficult experiences we can face in life. But it is in those moments of darkness that the light of faith shines brightest. Join me in discovering how God transforms pain into purpose, how loss can be the beginning of a new stage of blessing in our lives. We are going to analyze 3 keys that will change the way you see God's promises, 3 principles that will give you the strength to move forward even in the midst of pain. Get ready to receive a word of encouragement and hope, a word that will remind you that the God of Abraham is still the same God today. The Bible tells us in Genesis 23, 1-2, that Sarah died at the age of 127 years in the land of Canaan. Abraham, the man of faith, the father of many nations, was mourning the loss of his beloved wife. We can feel the depth of his pain in these verses. Abraham, despite his pain, did not let himself be consumed by sadness. His faith in God, in the God who had promised him descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, did not fade. And what did Abraham do? Instead of being paralyzed by grief, he made a decision that reveals the depth of his faith. In Genesis 23, 3-4, we read that Abraham rose up from before his dead and spake unto the sons of Heth, the inhabitants of that land. He said to them, I am a stranger and a sojourner with you. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. Abraham, despite being a stranger in that land, despite being in mourning, decided to buy a piece of land, a place to bury Sarah. Why? Because Abraham was not focused on the loss, but on the promise. God had promised Abraham that that land, the land of Canaan, would be for him and his descendants. By buying that land, Abraham was taking a step of faith. He was affirming his trust in God's promise. This act of Abraham is a powerful reminder for us today. How many times do we remain paralyzed by pain, by difficulties, by losses? We focus so much on what we don't have, on what we have lost, that we forget God's promises for our lives. Like Abraham, we too can choose to walk by faith, even in the midst of pain. We can choose to remember God's promises and act with courage, trusting that He will fulfill His word. Do not be discouraged if you are going through a difficult time. Remember that faith does not ignore pain, but transcends it. Faith allows you to see beyond present circumstances and cling to the hope of a glorious future. Trust in Him. Take that step of faith, and you will see how God works wonders in your life. In verses 3-18 of chapter 23 of Genesis, we see Abraham negotiating with the sons of Heth for the purchase of the cave of Machpelah. They, in their generosity, offer him the cave as a gift, but Abraham refuses to accept it that way. Abraham insists on paying a fair price for the cave. He doesn't want it to be said that they did him a favor. He wants it to be clear that the cave belongs to him by right. Why was it so important for Abraham to pay the full price? Because Abraham understood the value of integrity. He knew that his relationship with God was above any business deal. He did not want his inheritance, the inheritance that God had promised him, to be tarnished by any shadow of a doubt. Abraham teaches us that integrity is not negotiable. We cannot compromise our principles for convenience or social pressure. Our relationship with God, our integrity, is worth more than any material gain. We live in a world that often pressures us to take shortcuts, to do what is easiest, even if it is not right. But like Abraham, we are called to be different, to be light in the midst of darkness. The next time you face a decision, ask yourself, am I acting with integrity? Am I honoring God with my decisions? Chapter 3. The Eternal Legacy. The cave of Machpelah, purchased by Abraham with such care and at a fair price, was not simply a piece of land. This cave would become the burial place of the patriarchs, the place where the remains of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah would rest, a place that would become a symbol of the fulfillment of God's promises. Abraham, in his wisdom, was sowing seeds for future generations. He was establishing a legacy of faith, a legacy of obedience, a legacy of hope. Although Abraham did not live to see his descendants possess all the promised land, his faithfulness laid the foundation for that promise to come true. This story tells us about the power of our decisions. Every day we have the opportunity to sow seeds for the future, to leave a legacy that transcends our own lives. It is not about building monuments to our own ego, but about living in such a way that we inspire others to follow God. What kind of legacy are you building? What seeds are you sowing for future generations? Are you investing in the eternal or the temporary? Like Abraham, we are called to live with an eternal perspective. It's not just about us, but about those who will come after us. It's about leaving a better world than the one we found, a world where faith, integrity, and hope shine brightly. The story of Abraham teaches us that legacy is not built overnight. My friends, the story of Abraham reminds us that even in the midst of pain, faith can flourish and bear fruits of hope. Like Abraham, let's not be afraid to take that first step, to trust in God's promises and to build a legacy of faith for future generations. If this message touched your heart, type Amen in the comments and share your experience. Don't miss today's short, where I summarize the 3 keys of Genesis 23. And ring the bell so you don't miss the next video where we'll talk about Isaac and Rebekah. Remember that this is a journey of faith, a journey that we travel together as a family. See you next time, blessed family.